Okay. Quentin, you're the first box.
Great. So I have just this week been working a bit on the Weaver and review screens for it. The idea is we want people to be able to run the Weaver and click an I'm feeling lucky button and have a meaningful ability to edit the draft that the Weaver I'm feeling lucky button produces for them. So that seems to be going reasonably well so far. Like I'm just thinking about like rendering the preview screen in a way that makes sense. We talked about this a little bit on Monday already. I think the idea is we're going to actually show like a little picture that represents each screen of the interview so that there's a little bit of context for what those screens look like. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. It'll be easy for some of the screens and harder for others. And we're not sure like how much fidelity to put into things like what kind of question type it is. I think maybe not that much fidelity to start, but still a little bit easier way to understand what the interview is doing and what it will look like. One issue there, so this is all like kind of leading up to like maybe we want to try to do an interactive workshop with this at LitCon. And one of the issues with that is I found out when I tried to run the Weaver in my class of 21 students recently that it crashes, probably because it's using too much memory, probably because of all the form fixer stuff loading, giant models in it, like the English large web model that Spacey uses. So something for us to think about. I'm not sure there's fixes we can do with memory management. If we can maybe isolate some of the code that the Weaver uses. But for our demo, workshop, we're going to need form fixer as part of it. So I didn't need it for my class, but we'll need it for that. I think we're gonna
when is it? It only loads it into memory once, right? The models and such. How is that architected?
No. We cannot control how many times it loads it into memory. It was difficult. I did a deep dive into this at one point, like when we first started running in this, like when we first started doing all this, and like it's hard. You can't tell exactly, but like from what I could read up on it, it will load as many like as many copies as you have processes of WSGI running, I think. And I don't know how many processes of WSGI are running because I don't know if Jonathan knew by default. It's like 2 or 3. There's definitely like not just a single process, and I think it's either 2 or 3. The thing is, I know we're not using large anymore. I thought we had gotten rid of that. Which might be a reason why, like, I know some of the other predictions haven't been great. That may be one reason why, is because I had made that as a temporary change, I think.
What if we
the
primary reason we need to load those models is just to vectorize things. What if I opened up an endpoint somewhere and we could point at it?
That's kind of what I was thinking, like the microservice model. So it's just running once and we call it when we need it is the best fix, probably. I mean,
yeah.
We have to make sure
that's the main issue, though.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that's the main issue, and it could just be the Weaver is intensive otherwise, and like DocAssembly
just turn off the vector stuff and run it through, like do a dummy test and a chaos monkey test or something with.
I mean, I think we could probably turn off all of the form fixer stuff temporarily and see what happens.
Yeah, that's an option.
It's possible. There's other stuff going on. I don't know. I mean, like we're assembling a document. That's not too intensive. There could be some issues with Pike PDF optimization, maybe. I don't know. Like everything else is just using Pike PDF. So
I feel like there's just a lot of unknowns, and we don't actually know if we turn off all of the form fixer stuff, if it would fix it, or if we moved it completely different, or if it's just only like definitely the spacing models are part of it, but like, is that the only thing? And is it using enough CPU when everyone's on it that it like sort of starts to break down too. Like there are a lot of things that it could be. I can try and run like a lot of other like I could dedicate my afternoon to this. I was just about to start on like the name change stuff, but this is probably a bit more important in terms of getting some sort of demo working.
It's hard to say. Like I guess so. There's a couple ways we could solve it, right? We could spin up like 5 servers.
Yeah,
that could be one way to do it.
And then tell people to go to the right server.
That's tricky. We could say if you pick this state, go to this server, right? Like that could be the way we load down.
You could do regionally. If it really is just the spacey, then we could try. I could because we're already doing that vectorization as part of Spot, so I could just make a new endpoint that wraps a function to do the vectorization and returns it.
Yeah.
So it is also used by the passive Pi. So if we could make an endpoint for passive voice detection, that might be nice.
It uses the spacey for the.
It uses.
You know what? You don't have to download the. So my thought would be use spacey minus the vectorizing stuff, because the vectorizing is that's the only thing that requires downloading the large model or the small model. The other stuff you can do without downloading that model.
Passive Pi might need smaller medium, but it needs one of them. I don't think it doesn't need the large for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the passive. I haven't played with the passive, but I know most of the spacey features don't need the full downloaded model.
Mm.
If it does, then we can look and see.
I think it would be actually helpful, because one of the other problems with FormFixer right now is how long it takes to install, and that could be happening too. It could be that the first time it loads on the server, since it's restarted, it pulls in the model again. I don't know.
It should be doing that on setup on like pip install. That I did a lot of work making sure it did it on pip install and not on. It does take a while to just.
Well, for testing, it would be really nice if we didn't have to reinstall that every time. Like I'm building like the rate my PDF page anyway, even if it's not happening.
Oh, we can split some of the rate my PDF stuff up. That's a different thing. We can split that into a different Docker part that would make it a bit faster. But
okay. I'm just thinking like of all the times when I install FormFixer, the slow part is when it's trying to install the spacey models. So if we split that up, we would avoid the memory issues that we've been talking about. Even if they're theoretical, it would help with speeding up installation time, which might make it a little bit more pleasant package to use.
It is generally just more. It will make it more stable, because spacey is just not super. Not that it's not stable, but it's just very difficult to get set up, and that's the stability part where we have issues with.
Since we're already calling the Spot API, why don't we just open up a non-documented Spot API point that will then use the same authentication and stuff.
And it should maybe be option. Like I don't know how to configure this with pip, but it would be nice if people could install it self-contained, but we could use our endpoint. That would be kind of the ideal if it's possible.
It's possible. It starts to get kind of complicated. It's definitely doable, but I think I still want to take a look, because I feel like even if we did all these things, I want to make sure that the Weaver is stable anyway. So I can do some. I'll try to avoid testing on dev, but if I can't reproduce, if I can run a local thing, I'll cap it at a specific amount of because you can cap Docker runs for a specific amount of memory. And then if I can't get it to crash by connecting to it and from 20 different browsers or whatever, just stress testing it, then I might see essentially I'll see if I can do that and monitor and see oh, what's the CPU doing and what's the memory doing. And if I can't get it, if nothing's actively changing, then I'll monitor stuff on dev, and I won't try to crash it, but I will try to run several instances of the Weaver and see what actually starts getting used more and stuff. And I'll hopefully can just take a look and see what, if anything, would go wrong with it. We'll see.
Okay.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, and I can share the exact file that they were working with too. So
Yeah.
if we establish that it is the spacey stuff, then to the extent that all those library, I mean, I haven't done the passive, I don't do the passive voiceover on Spot, but it's all part of the same library, so I imagine it is. I can open up that endpoint, and then the nice thing is that Spot already has like load balancing and a bunch of stuff put in, so we can just turn up the number of workers and be ready for a something. It might be slow in some point because of the way it queues things. I get a lot of hits, but
I think slow is okay as long as we're not timing out. So we should check that out, I suppose. We do kind of assume that every API query is going to resolve within 30 seconds now. Do you think it would be a lot different from that?
on our highest, I suspect not. Under the sort of usage that Spot normally gets, I'm just imagining that the vectorization is a part of the process that does, and probably, so obviously I'm saying it's like less than the processing time that I see sometimes, but I don't think it's a question of concurrent users. I think it's the real issue. I'm not quite sure what that will look like if it goes beyond the number of workers and it queues it up. Worst case scenario can take, if things get really backlogged, it can, I think it could probably take more than 30 seconds. But we might be able to address that by just spinning up a bunch of workers.
Which sounds like it should be a lot easier than spinning up multiple DocAssembly servers. So.
Yeah, I just move a slider on a dashboard and pay them some money.
But money's like that's our cheapest resource, right? We're talking about
that's easy. That's easy.
If it's less than $200, it's definitely worth doing that.
It's definitely.
I'm kind of assuming it is.
The nice thing is it's already there, so we just got to move the slider, and it's already attached to their credit card, and it's already so. If you establish that's the issue, we'll do that.
Cool. This is one of the few times that microservices and cloud stuff actually is useful and important.
So I'm excited that other bits of infrastructure at the other things we built at the lab can help the other things we built at the lab. That's sort of exciting to me to think that we can lean on each other.
Yeah. And for context, I don't think it took all 20 students using it for it to crash. It felt like it was, I moved people pretty quickly. It was if you had any problems, move over to the test server. And that might've been as many as half of the people. And they managed to crash that too. So and I don't remember having this before, so I think it feels like Spacey is the new thing, but who knows?
All right. Well, if we establish that it is, I think we have a direction to go. Cool. I love it when we solve things, and if that's the case, Quentin, we'll have that fixed before you come back. So.
Okay. Well, you don't have to promise that, Bryce, but we'll see. And the other thing, Bryce was already hinting at, which is we want to try to gather as close to 50 name change forms from around the country as we can that haven't already been automated in DocAssembly for an exercise where we're going to hand label them so they're ready to go for participants at LitCon, and then they can build a draft automation with the Weaver. So we'll need some help to do that. If we won't be able to do it, I'll just David, Bryce, and myself.
You have the Alaska one already, right? With the fields already labeled. You want it as a PDF or you want it as the docx?
It doesn't matter. Actually, yeah, it really doesn't matter. As long as we hand label it, it's fine.
I've done both, I think. I'm not 100% sure they're correct, but I'm happy with some of those.
And it's for the goal of advancing a real project that does this, right? Because we're going to take about an hour and a half to do it live together for people who've never used the Weaver before. And if the labels are already correct, then we think that will save someone some time later. But
yeah, definitely.
But it's okay as a prototype too.
I
think without it being exactly right, people can still test and see. I don't know. Yeah, it would be great to get that from Alaska. And it feels like if you prefer it as a Word document, that's the version we would want.
Okay, I think I've done it already, so I'll double check on that.
One last thing is I had reached out to Caroline Jarrett about our project, Rate My PDF, and she was like, doesn't believe in automated ratings of forms, so she's not going to participate.
Who is she?
Wonder
Who
if
is
we should-
she?
She's the one who wrote Forms That Work.
Oh, yeah. I remember you talking about that. Mhm.
So that's disappointing because we based a lot of our ideas around her book, which I still think is a great book. I don't know if there's a way we should still try to get more specific feedback from her and figure out if it changes anything about her design, but where things stand right now.
Well, she may change her mind. She's just, I mean, it's people get stuck in their ways, don't they? I mean, this conversation was going right, well, you're speaking at it. Isn't there some LSN tab or no SRLN thing on Chat GPT, and you're speaking at that, right? There's
No, but they just cited that article that I wrote that I'm not.
I saw. I couldn't remember. Anyway, so all of a sudden, all this hubbub is going on around in the court, to access to justice, saying, "Well, it sounds really cool. People are really skeptical about it, and I don't know. It's telling people to shoot their wives, type of thing." And I feel like saying, well, I drive a car, and that doesn't mean I'm going around telling people to mow their wives down with the car. It's just like, it's such a funny, like, this distrust of tools. It's just, oh my God, knives, you might cut yourself.
Yeah.
The reflexive, I don't want to use, I'm against all automation, as opposed to I'm against bad automation.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think that's fair.
There is a lot of bad automation, though. So I
there's
understand.
a lot of bad stuff in the world, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't use it.
Well, you always have to ask compared to what? I'm just saying I understand people's hesitation, and as a most of the time right thing, it's probably a good call. And some, people don't want to do the balancing test, and a lot of people have just drawn bright lines for themselves, which I find frustrating.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
Understandable.
But I mean, it sort of falls into that same category of, oh, my brain just died. Wait a minute. Let's see if it can come back.
It's like all legal aid has to be attorneys. Right? There's
Yeah.
only one way to do it.
Or, I'm sorry, just went right. There's this thing that people do, and I just completely forgot what it. Oh, I know. It's like saying the tech can't do that. It's the attitude of, and maybe this reaction is from people saying the tech can't do that, rather than saying, how can we make the tech do what you want it to do? As if tech has its own personality all by itself, as if it's isolated from all the other things that we want to do in our lives.
And it's as if it doesn't change.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think what's interesting is like the alternative I agree with, it's just not feasible, which is usability testing every form, with real users.
Yeah.
Which is just not something courts have the ability to do. And nor does that really make sense.
Interest or
feels
desire.
like once you've tested a few forms, you should be able to draw general principles from that and not have to spend 4 or 5 hours testing each of your 1,000 forms.
It also could help you. This doesn't preclude you from doing that either. It just means that you can get to that faster. You can get to it.
Yeah.
It's all about how you use things.
I'm persuaded that our approach has value. And I think we're avoiding some of the pitfalls.
You think?
But just we're not going to get probably the first version of what we thought. We'll have to think about whether there's something else that's worth consulting or advice or, softening things in what we're doing to make it get a quasi approval. We'll see. All right. I'll stop there. I know we have to, you have a 1 o'clock. I don't know if David, Bryce and I should join the 1 o'clock.
I don't think you need to. I think if I look at the agenda, it looks very, very, I think it's still in we're in the weeds of some other things that are not us. I think the biggest thing that group is going to want out of us is a working Rate My PDF and the ability to
batch process stuff.
Okay. And I think what will happen as far as the timeline there, just so people understand, this is us helping Michigan with some stuff. But the basic idea is they've already chosen their forms that they're going to work on, and now they're going to have some human people working on improving those forms. So we sort of missed the opportunity to help do the selection, but that was never going to be where we could do something anyway because of the political nature. And so what the hope is that as they do this process, we'll then be able to take some generalizable parts about what they did, which are effectively the metrics we're using in Rate My PDF, and then be able to automate bits of those so that the next set of forms people go through, they'll be able to more quickly engage with those points of concern. So to the extent that our metrics align with what already they're doing, great. To the extent that they do something and then it's like, oh, that would be cool if you could do that too, that's where we'll have the opportunity to do it.
And the plain language glossary is something I was realizing that's something they've been building. We were talking about using our own glossary just from plainlanguage.gov, but maybe we should incorporate the Michigan one so that we can have that be the one we use for our batch run.
Although the way we have to do that,
Whoops.
the way we have to do that in a way that is consistent with us not having an agreement with Michigan courts to use their glossary.
Okay, so if they can put it in some format, they can upload maybe, I don't know.
No. The point is, to the extent we can have a more of a talk offline. Basically, whatever we do, we have to do fair use with regards to the production of the content. So to the extent that they pointed out a bunch of stuff that is fair use, we can point at that. As far as they're concerned, they didn't do anything. Or they don't want us to. They don't want us to build on their work. Actually, it's an interesting. We can talk more later.
Okay.
They want the benefit of us doing their work, but without any of us actually having done anything on their work, because they won't give us permission.
Yeah. Okay. No, I kind of know that whole saga.
Yeah. I can talk the same one. All right. Michelle.
Date stuff's almost ready to PR. With some observations about bugs that aren't great. So because of submission issues, the submission validation clashing with, anyway. Worked on some test stuff with Caroline, been fun, still more to do. And worked on some test stuff with Bryce. Really making some progress, getting closer to getting it on an interview on the playground, which would be really cool. So excited. I think that's it. We have like 3 minutes, so yeah, that's good.
All right, Bryce.
Yeah. To elaborate on what Michelle said, we don't have a proof of concept, but we have proven that Kiln can run Puppeteer stuff on your DocAssembly server. Proof of concept is at least a minimum, like less than MVP, but it's still like a product, and we were sort of like hacking around with commands in Bash. So not quite a proof of concept yet, but very close. So I was doing a lot of that and also trying to move some other stuff for Kiln forward. I also did a payments page. Like, it's just a pretty simple, just like get all of the payment for e-filing stuff. If you had a page that you can add all your payment methods and delete them and edit them and whatever. And you showed it to Matt, and I think he liked it, but I think he had a lot of specific questions about how it would be integrated with the interviews, which I just needed to then finish doing. And yeah, that's not blocking or anything. And that's, I don't know if that's worth a conversation here. But I do think Matt wants to start integrating e-filing stuff differently than we have been, essentially like less of it's all one interview sort of thing. And he wants to make it so that there's like, you're still developing individual interviews and there's just a single button at the very end that says, I want to e-file this now. And so to keep things a bit more separate, and also mostly just because DocAssemble is not great at like stability for any reason. And so anytime you would change a slightly small thing in your interview, you could break e-filing stuff and you wouldn't know how or why. And so he doesn't want to be able to that to happen, and then not to prevent like any sort of development. He thinks it might make it a bit easier to actually integrate existing forms with e-filing, or like new other forms to add e-filing to other forms. I'm not super sure that's going to be the case, but essentially we'll see how it goes. I don't really know if like by the time we leave, we should probably have like a suggested here's how we do e-filing development or on interviews, but given this and it like it's working, but I don't really think it's like long term would work for Aleo. We should probably figure out what to like suggest and have documented and things about that. All that to say, I'm not super sure. That's not like a blocking thing, but it is just still a rather large open question. That's it.
All right. I have to jump to another call. Caroline, do you have something you want to say in 10 seconds?
Just the testing I've been doing for Michelle and Bryce is fantastic.
Nice.
Really, I mean, it has bugs, but it's really, really helpful.
Choice of automated testing. All right, cool. Anyone else? Can we actually stop this, or should I jump out of this room and let it keep recording, or?
We can probably stop.